Disruption to public transportation as some operators refuse to work. More sugar expected from this year's crop. And coming up in sports, the IPL to stay in India despite the strain of general elections.
Credible, balanced, committed. This is the CBC Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Shane Jones, leading the news at 7. Longer waits coupled with reduced buses were the order of the day for commuters as they were forced to cope with the fallout from a second work stoppage by the majority of PSV operators. This strike coincided with the start of the new term for thousands of primary and secondary school students across the island. Our Rianne Phillips has been following that story.
In the city, over by the Constitution River Terminal, commuters vented their frustration.
Well, to be honest, it was very hectic and very bad. It was poor. And I work all in Gall Hill, St. John. So I can't get a van, nor I can't get a bus. So I had to call in and let my boss know that I can't come to work today. So I will have to go early in the morning.
Which route do you depend on and how long were you here?
From 7 this morning, I catch Sergeant Street. That's the van I catch. The only van I could catch, as a matter of fact. So, you know, it's very bad for me.
I already got van from his town from about 6 o'clock and nothing as yet. There's a real kiosk, a bus service, and also a van service.
Which route do you have to depend on?
I have to go to St. John. I have to get Collins Savannah. And it's very, very rough. Real rough. I even know if I can get one to get to work.
I get here 7:30 and a van ain't come out to know yet. 9:04 and a van ain't come yet. But me all set, can't go work. Can't get now, all they could do is just go back home.
Some people, however, still managed to get one of the few PSVs operating or a bus from the State-run Transport Board. In a statement, the board said it had increased efforts to fill the void.
Until this action has been resolved, which involves the public service vehicles, the Transport Board, as we constantly do, will continue to try to fill any gaps that we can fill, but we do have limited resources and we are working on that as well. As usual, our priority are to get the school children to school, so you might find that the waits are a little longer than usual, but again, as soon as we have addressed that particular situation, we will seek to move as much of the regular traveling public as we can. In between there, of course, we're not going to stop moving the traveling public, but we will try to give priority to the children going to school.
The situation was a bit different for those relying on the PSVs heading to Speightstown and beyond. Over 90% of the operators who played those routes stayed off the job. In Baxter's Road, there was a high demand for buses heading north. When our team arrived, police and education officials were out ensuring students boarded buses to head to their respective schools. Just before 9, there was a rush for the buses, but one onlooker believes it could have been avoided.
I come down early and saw the crowd gathering there, and I saw children getting out of buses and joining the crowd, and buses coming out that they could catch, and they refused to catch it, so the crowd started to build. So they got their favorite buses, and they don't want to go to school, so they're just playing the fool because a lot of them could have avoided the crowd they hit this morning. So that's all that they're doing. They may really want transportation, they may go in certain things. So that's what's causing all the problem.
There has been an overwhelming display of unity between PSV operators and owners for today's work stoppage. And as you can see behind me, scores of operators and owners have gathered here for marathon talks at the NUPW headquarters. The operators have been offered a meeting with Transport Authority officials for tomorrow, Wednesday, January 9th, 2019. Rianne Phillips, CBC News.
Thanks, Rianne. Well, listen to this story. The Transport Authority says it was very surprised by the action taken by PSV operators as it had already agreed to sit down with them tomorrow. The authority says as the regulatory body, its remit is with the permit holders. Chairman Ian Estwick says the body is sensitive to the representation made to it and therefore agreed to meet with the newly formed group. He adds, however, that they cannot fix all the problems that have existed for decades overnight. He also notes that while the authority is willing to listen and act, it cannot and will not compromise in the areas that will affect the safety and security of the traveling public and other road users. The Alliance for Owners of Public Transport, AOPT, says it is disheartened that some operators withdrew their service today, compromising the island's public transportation system. They are particularly disappointed that this was done on the first day of the new school term, when thousands of children were among the commuters depending on the service. Now, Public Relations Officer Mark Haynes says his organization and the Association for Public Transport Operators, APTO, together represent all PSV workers in Barbados. Now, according to him, the two associations agreed just last month that they would not engage in any protest action, as they were going to allow the negotiation process with government to run its course.
We think it is very ill-conceived to contemplate any kind of industrial action today. I cannot, it would be invidious of me to say what government would do or would not do in terms of responding to the proposals which we have put to government. The Alliance and APTO collectively have put together a comprehensive document to government, which is being studied, and government assures us that it will get back to us, and we should await that response. Anything else is very immature.
Mr. Haynes says they will not be supporting what he described as an ill-conceived action. He's calling for common sense to prevail. Well, when contacted, interim chairman of the APTO, Maurice Lee, opted not to comment on the matter, referring CBC News to a statement. It says the matter involving public transport operators and their decision to protest was an ongoing issue, and hence no comment will be made by APTO to inhibit any progress. Now, it also indicates that APTO regards PSV operators as a family, since workers and owners cannot operate in isolation. Well, classes at several St. Michael's schools appear not to have been seriously disrupted by this morning's strike by PSV operators. A CBC team visited several of them to get a sense of how it all unfolded on the first day of the new school term. Here's Sharika Griffith.
It's back to the classroom for thousands of primary and secondary school students following a 3-week Christmas break. Despite some early morning transportation issues, several principals are reporting a good first day back of what is expected to be an action-packed second term. When the CBC team arrived, students of Grantley Prescott Memorial Primary were busy recapping what they did over the Christmas holiday. Acting Principal Belinda Martindale said the day got off to a good start.
Everything has started rather smoothly, actually. The children look rather eager to be back here. The staff, they are all ready, and we've put in a lot of plans already, so we're all very anxious to get going.
Any issues with the PSV strike this morning?
Yes, actually it affected some of our staff members and no doubt some of our students, but they have endeavored to come, and we are very thankful, but we hope that the matter will resolve as soon as possible so that we won't have any more hiccups.
Over at the Parkinson Memorial School, these students arrived more than an hour after the 8:15 start time. But Principal Ian Holder reported a relatively full student population for the first day. This term will see the implementation of several new measures, including a procedure for late arrivals.
So I've requested that students make sure that they report on their lateness with a late pass. We have a late pass that they're given, and to make sure that teachers have a recording of that. And then we would have also had a few cases last term where we would have intercepted a few weapons on the campus, and we're trying to eliminate that system completely. So we're asking that no students bring any weapons onto the campus, and we're also looking at having some searches being done while school is in process.
The second term has long been associated with sports. Students of the Springer Memorial School were expected to start their eliminations for inter-house sports from today. And head of the Physical Education Department, Julie Phillips, says the school is instilling core values that will benefit students on and off the track.
Practice, repeat, have a time plan. It's about time management, because even as you go into your daily jobs, your daily life, you need to have a plan in order to be able to execute well. So those are some of the principles and guidelines that we are working with our girls. And of course, everybody likes to win. We want to win, we want to do well, but at the end of the day, There's scholarships out there. There are other avenues that we are trying to channel our athletes into.
The term concludes on March 28th for students and 29th for teachers. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Thanks, Sharika. The insurance industry is hoping the new regulations for PSVs will translate into fewer accident claims from that sector. This as it throws its support behind the new rules being implemented by the Transport Authority. President of the General Insurance Association of Barbados, Michael Holder, says the GIAB recognizes the importance of the PSVs to the island, but it thinks its efforts to bring order to the way they operate is a good step. While he did not have figures, Mr. Holder says the accident rate for the sector is way too high.
Based on the reports and the discussions with those companies who presently carry the insurance for the PSVs, it was not at a stage where, a level where we were happy with what we were seeing. Because not only is it a case of repairs to vehicles that are damaged, but then there was also the aspect of personal injury and the escalating costs of personal injury claims. So those two components, they're combined to result in higher claims costs.
Mr. Holder cautions that if the accident rate for the sector stays at current levels, PSV will not be the only ones to be impacted. Officials of the Barbados Agricultural Management Company are cautiously optimistic about an increase in sugar yields this year. They say several initiatives have been introduced which they hope will bear fruit. Our Ron Brathwaite reports.
There's growing optimism about Barbados producing a high yield of sugar for the 2019 sugar crop, despite some conservatism across the agricultural sector. Word of this from General Manager at the BAMC, Leslie Paris, who tells CBC News that taking into account a number of variables, including the weather experienced last year, cane fires, as well as the field assessment undertaken, the 2019 sugar yields seem to be on par with last year. He says, however, given some innovations by farmers, BAMC officials are cautiously optimistic about a better yield this year.
At approximately 140 to 144,000 tons, similar to last year, which will produce close to 11,000 tons of sugar. That is what we're looking at. But of course, the outcome in terms of the conversion to sugar will depend largely on the quality of the cane and the yield that we get from the fields here. There are variables that one has to take into consideration, such as fire, cane fires. I would say at this stage that we are on course. A number of the farms did some forced back planting, which was intended to increase their delivery to the factory.
Mr. Parr says he's guarded by the fact that any information attained thus far regarding this year's crop would be unofficial. The BAMC head says he'll be in a better position to be more definitive within the next 2 weeks, as the farms are still going over the estimates.
We had the preliminary estimates by the end of December. But again, we will be going through them, as I said, with a view to any fine-tuning that might be necessary. None might be, but we prefer to be ahead of the curve, so to speak. And it should be noted that Portville, given its capacity, can quite easily take off 140 to 150,000 ton of cane. It did so last year, and the efficiency level was in the region of 90 to 92%.
According to Mr. Paris, factory workers must be commended for the job they have done in ensuring that the maintenance and upkeep of the facility at Portville remains up to standard. Last year, Portville, the island's lone sugar factory, collected some 144,000 tons of cane from farmers across the island. This yielded some 12,000 tons of sugar. Ron Brathwaite, CBC News.